The twin suns were setting behind Zora Ridge, painting the rocky battlefield in deep orange and blood-red light. Wind howled between the sharp cliffs, carrying the scent of metal, dust, and the charge of something ancient, Commander Alcarak. Low behind a boulder, her violet skin streaked with sweat and ash. Her unit was gone, wiped out in less than 6 minutes, all because of one enemy, one human. They called him Ghost Suit across the galaxy. No one had seen his face. No one had survived long enough to learn what was under that black armored shell. He didn't speak, didn't hesitate, didn't bleed, at least not where anyone could. See, some said he wasn't human at all. Others whispered he was Earth's last secret weapon, sent only when the enemy needed to vanish without trace. Alcarak clenched her jaw and tapped the side of her helmet. Static, her comms were dead. Fried by his EMP wave, she was alone now, alone with the one warrior even the Bracken feared. But she wasn't afraid. She was furious, and she had a plan from above. She spotted movements, silent, precise, unnatural. The black-clad figure leaped across rocks like a shadow come to life. Each motion was fluid, deadly, inhumanly fast, but Alcara was ready. She'd trained in the winds of Kelasir, fought in zero-gravity duels over the ruins of Kara Prime. She had survived worse. Maybe. She waited until he was close, just meters away. Then, in a blur, she launched herself at him, activating the twin blades on her forearms. They clashed, his gauntlets deflecting each strike with expert timing, but she was faster than he expected, and angrier. They fought like lightning and thunder, blows raining down, sparks flying with every impact. Alcara growled, her strength fueled by vengeance. The last member of her squad, her little brother, had screamed her name before the human cut him down. Now she would end this, end him. She ducked low, feinted left, then spun behind him, slamming her elbow into his spine. He staggered just for a moment. That's when she moved. She reached for the magnetic seals on his backplate and tore it open with all her might. He twisted, but too late. Her hand yanked at the latch near his collar. The armor split. It hissed as pressure vents opened, and then the helmet cracked free. Tumbling to the ground, Alcara stepped back. Stunned, her heart pounded like a war drum, her blades lowered slightly. She had expected a monster, a machine, something horrific. But what she saw made her freeze. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't a weapon. He was young, a human man, barely older than a cadet. His face was bruised, blood at the edge of his lip, and his eyes. His eyes were wide and blue, full of pain, not anger, not evil. Pain. Alcara stood frozen, her breathing uneven. Why hadn't he fought harder to stop her from unsealing the suit? Why was there no hate in his eyes? She looked down, and something else caught her attention. A data chip stuck to his chest with a broken strap. Not a weapon, a message. The human, barely whispering, said one word, help. Then he collapsed. Alcara didn't know what to feel. Her fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from confusion. This wasn't a killing machine. This was someone running from something. She scanned the skies. What if this human hadn't been the hunter? What if he was the prey? The ridge grew colder as the suns vanished behind the cliffs. Alcaraz stood over the fallen human, heart racing, mind spinning. She had come to destroy him. But now she wasn't sure who the real enemy was. The human's body was still lying on the cold rock under the fading sky. Alcara stood over him, her hands shaking, her mind filled with questions she could not answer. This wasn't how warriors were supposed to fall. Not silent, not afraid, and certainly not asking for help. She knelt beside him slowly. The black armor that once made him look invincible now seemed too heavy for his frame. She could see it clearly. Now he was injured. Badly, there were burns on his arms, bruises along his ribs, and blood soaking through his side. Alcora reached out, hesitated, then gently touched the small data chip strapped to his chest. It blinked once, then glowed blue. A hologram flickered to life above it, showing a spinning Earth symbol with strange characters around it. Human language, but not one she knew. Translate, she whispered, tapping her own wristband. Her device scanned the hologram and slowly began to display the message. Word by word, it read, "Mission failed. Target lost. Fallback order. Protect the child at all cost. Do not engage hostiles unless required. Repeat, protect the child. Alcora." Blinked, her heart pounding again. What child? Why was he here alone, in enemy territory, wearing a combat suit with such an order? The human groaned, his head turning slightly. His eyes opened, weak and blurry. He looked up at her not with fear, but with recognition, like he'd seen her face before. "Zyra," he whispered. "Is she safe?" Alcora leaned in. "Who is Zyra?" she asked quietly. "Where is the child?" He coughed, blood coming from his mouth. His voice was barely a breath. "They took her. The Sky Raiders. I couldn't stop them." His hand reached out, not for a weapon, but for her arm. His grip was weak, trembling. "She's only 5, he whispered. "Please, help her." Alcora stared at him, frozen again. She had trained to kill humans, to hate them, but this man, this warrior, is not a killer. He was a protector. She stood up and looked around the ridge. The Sky Raiders, an outlaw group known for stealing tech, slaves, and anything valuable, had been spotted nearby. If they had the child, time was running out. Alcora tapped her wristband, sending out a short emergency pulse. No answer. Her ship had been destroyed earlier in the battle. If she wanted to find this child, she had to do it alone. She turned back to the human. He was losing consciousness fast, but his eyes met hers once more, desperate, pleading. "I'll find her," Alcora said, voice steady. "I swear it." She searched his armor for any clue in a small compartment near his waist. She found a cracked photo-ant image of a tiny girl with dark hair, bright eyes, and a stuffed alien toy in her arms. Zyra. Next to the photo was a beacon device, barely working. She tapped it, and a weak signal blinked 3 times north, across the ridge, towards the canyon forests. She didn't wait. She covered the human's body with her field blanket, placed his helmet beside him, and whispered, "Stay alive." Then she ran, through wind and shadow, through sharp stone and broken ground. She ran, not as a soldier, but as a promise keeper. Night fell quickly on Zora Ridge. The canyons ahead were dark, echoing with strange animal calls, but she didn't stop. Her legs burned. Her lungs fought the cold, dry air, but her mind was clear. Find the child, bring her back, no matter what. Suddenly, a faint sound reached her ears. A soft, high-pitched voice, crying, calling, "Daddy, Daddy." Alcora froze, listening. Then she moved again, more careful now. She crept between thick roots and rocky walls, and there, in a narrow clearing, she saw her. The girl was inside a metal cage, barely large enough for her small body. A Sky Raider stood nearby, drinking from a flask, unaware of Alcora's presence. She counted 3 others, one by the fire, one checking gear, and one asleep. Alcora crouched low, narrowed her eyes, and whispered to herself, "This won't be quiet." She activated her blades. The Sky Raiders were laughing now, their loud voices echoing between the rocks. They had no idea that death was moving toward them, silent, fast, and angry. Alcora crouched behind a moss-covered wall, her breath steady, eyes focused. The little girl was still crying, hugging her knees inside the rusted cage. Her voice was hoarse, soft, but still calling out, "Daddy, please." Alcara's heart tightened at the sound. She remembered her younger brother, how he used to cry when afraid, and how she had sworn to protect him until the war took that chance away. Now, this child was all alone. No father, no one to defend her. Except Alcara, the cage was bolted to the ground, surrounded by 3 pirates. One was sharpening a blade, another roasting meat over a small fire, and the third, one the biggest, had a long-range rifle resting across his knees. She would need to move fast, strike hard, and leave no one standing. Alcara studied the path. She saw the patterns, the lazy way the guard turned, the time it took to look away. She only had seconds between each gap, but seconds were all she needed. She took one deep breath, closed her eyes, then she moved like wind through leaves. She dashed across the open space before the first guard could blink. She drove her blade through his neck. He dropped without a sound, blood splashing into the fire. The second one jumped up, confused, shouting, but her blade met his gut before his mouth finished the word. The third, he reached for his rifle, but he was too slow. Alcara flipped over the fire, kicked the weapon from his hands, and struck him hard across the jaw. He fell backward, unconscious before his head hit the ground. Silence returned, broken only by the girl's sobs. Alcara turned toward the cage, her steps gentle now, her weapon retracted. The girl backed away, scared, her tiny fingers clutching the bars. "No, don't hurt me," she whimpered. Alcara knelt, slowly removing her helmet. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly. "I'm here to take you home." The girl blinked, staring at the alien woman with wide, more tear-filled eyes. You're not one of them?" she asked. Alcara shook her head. "I'm a soldier. But I'm not your enemy." She reached forward, pulling at the cage's lock. It was old, rusted, and stubborn, but with one strong twist of her blade, it snapped. Open the door creaked as it swung wide. The girl didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she stepped out, her bare feet shaking. "Where's my dad?" she asked, voice trembling. Alcara knelt to her level. "He's safe for now," she said, "but he's very hurt." The girl sniffled and wiped her eyes. "I want to see him." "You will," Alcara promised, lifting her gently into her arms. But just as she turned to leave, a blaster bolt sizzled past her head. It slammed into a tree behind her, exploding into splinters. Alcara spun around. Shielding the girl, a 4th Sky Raider had returned. This one different, taller, armored, and angry. He snarled when he saw the others dead. "You?" he shouted, raising his rifle. "You'll pay for that." Alcara ran, holding the girl tight to her chest. Another bolt flew by, grazing her shoulder armor. She kept moving, weaving through the trees, her feet pounding the dirt. She had to find shelter, fast, ahead. She spotted an old cave entrance. Half hidden by vines, she darted inside just as a blast scorched the rocks behind her. Darkness swallowed them both, cool and damp, but safe for now. She placed the girl down and whispered, "Stay here, stay low." The child nodded, scared, but brave. Alcara turned back toward the cave mouth, waiting, listening. Then she saw him, the armored Sky Raider, stomping closer, scanning the shadows. "You can't hide forever," he growled. "You don't know who I am." Alcara stepped into the moonlight, her voice calm. "I don't care who you are," she said. "You're not taking her." He laughed, raising his weapon. But Alcara threw something at his feet, a flash mine. It exploded in white light, blinding him for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all she needed. She leaped forward, tackled him to the ground, and locked her blade at his throat. "Tell me who sent you," she growled. "Why did you take the child?" He coughed, spitting blood. "We didn't know she had a tracker," he muttered. "Didn't know she mattered." "Who wanted her?" Alcara shouted. "The Taggern Syndicate," he gasped. They think she's the key." To a human? Weapon hidden in the ruins. Alcara's eyes widened. This child. She wasn't just important to her father, she was the reason the war might start again. The Sky Raider groaned beneath her boot, his armor cracked where she had slammed him. Into the rock, his mouth was bleeding and his eyes were wild. Alcara pressed the edge of her blade to his throat just enough to draw a thin line of blood. "You're going to tell me everything," she said coldly. Right now, the child hid deeper in the cave, clutching the stuffed alien toy that had fallen from her cage. Her eyes were wide, watching, afraid. Alcara didn't want to scare her. But there was no time to be gentle, not with the kind of words this raider had just spoken. The Taggern Syndicate, that name alone sent a chill down her spine. They were not common pirates. They were manipulators of wars, sellers of weapons, and dealers in blood. If they wanted this child, it wasn't about ransom, it was about power. The raider coughed again, struggling to speak. "She's got a code." Hidden in her body, he spat, biolocked. Ancient tech from Earth's black labs. Something about a gate. Alcaraz. Heart skipped a beat. A gate. There were rumors, always rumors, about old human experiments, about secret projects buried under destroyed cities. Most called them myths, but some believed there were ancient weapons left from Earth's darkest age, sealed away and protected by codes only a few could unlock. And now? The key was a little girl hiding behind her in the shadows. "Where is this gate?" she asked, blade still pressed to his throat. "I don't know." The raider growled. "I swear." The client never said. "They just paid us to bring her alive." Alcora leaned closer. Who was the client? The raider hesitated, then whispered, "A woman. Human. Military-grade armor. Sleek steel. She called herself Captain Merrick." Alcara froze. That name. She knew it. A former Earth commander, declared Rogue, after leading a forbidden raid on an alien peace council. Last seen disappearing with a stolen warship and vanishing from all systems. If Merrick was behind this, things were worse than she. Feared Alcara stepped back with one swift motion. She struck the raider unconscious. She didn't kill him. He wasn't worth the energy. She turned to the child, her voice gentler now. "We have to move, little one." The girl stood slowly, still hugging her toy. "I want my daddy," she whispered. "You'll see him soon." Alcrea said, reaching out her hand. "But we can't stay here. It's not safe outside the cave." The night had fully arrived. The twin moons floated above the canyon, casting pale blue light on the trees. Alcara moved quickly, her senses alert, carrying the child through the darkness. They were alone now, and every shadow could be an enemy. She tapped her wristpad, trying again to get a signal. This time, a flicker, weak but real. It was coming from the south, the same direction she had left the injured human. He was still alive. Her eyes narrowed. She had to reach him, but she also had to be careful. If Merrick was involved, there could be more. Waiting in the shadows, the child stirred in her arms. "Why do bad people want me?" she asked softly. Alcara looked down at her. "Because you're important," she replied. "But that doesn't mean they're allowed to hurt you." The girl nodded slowly, trusting her. Her innocence made Alcara feel something she hadn't in years. Hope. This war, this bloodshed. Maybe it wasn't the end of everything. Maybe, if they saved her, there was a future worth fighting for. Suddenly, a sound cut through the forest, a strange hum in the distance. Alcara ducked behind a boulder, holding the child close. She peeked out. A ship, black and sharp-edged, hovered above the trees, scanning the ground with red beams. She recognized the design immediately. Taggern Syndicate stealth ship. "They had brought reinforcements. They're tracking us," Alcara whispered. To herself, the child looked up, scared again. "What do we do?" Alcara clenched her teeth. "We don't run," she said. "We outsmart them." She reached into her gear and pulled out a reflective beacon decoy. She tossed it far to the east, where it blinked once before, emitting a pulse. The ship immediately turned and followed it. Drawn by the signal, Alcara stood and moved fast. Running west instead, deeper into the ridge path, they ran for what felt like forever, until she finally reached the slope where she'd left him. The human, he was still there, barely conscious, but alive. His eyes fluttered open when he heard her voice. "I found her," Alcara said. Kneeling beside him, "She's safe." He reached out weakly, his hand brushing his daughter's cheek. "Zyra," he whispered, smiling through the pain. Zyra smiled too. "Daddy." The reunion between father and daughter was brief, too brief, because the ground began to shake. Not from footsteps, but from engines. Big ones. Alcara looked up. The Taggern ship was returning this time. It wasn't fooled by the decoy. It had scanned the area and was now descending, slowly, like a metal beast hunting its prey. "We have to move," she whispered, helping the injured human to his feet. He groaned but nodded, his arm wrapped around her shoulder. Zyra held on to his other side, trying to be strong, even though her tiny legs were shaking. "I don't have much strength left," the man said, his voice barely audible. "I just need a few more minutes." Alcara scanned the horizon. They were exposed here on a cliff slope, with no cover, no caves, no shadows. Nothing but rocks and open sky. The worst place to be. During a drone sweep, she looked back at the child. Zyra was brave, but her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. Alcara couldn't let them be caught not after coming this far. Her mind raced, her fingers tapping on her wrist console. Then she saw it a drop beacon signal, just 2 kilometers to the west. "Do you see that ridge over there?" She pointed. The human squinted and nodded slowly. "That's our only chance," she said. "An old supply drop zone from the last war. If we can reach it, there might be weapons or evac gear left behind." He didn't argue, he just moved. Pain in every step, but determination in his eyes. For his daughter, he would walk through fire. They moved fast. Alcara carried most of his weight, her armor straining under the pressure. Zyra ran beside them, clutching her stuffed alien toy, refusing to cry. Above them, the ship circled like a predator, scanning the terrain with red beams of death. Alcara ducked under ledges, ran between boulders, anything to stay hidden. Suddenly, a high-pitched screech echoed through the canyon, a drone small, fast, and arms zipped through the air toward them. Alcara reacted without thinking. She dropped the human behind a rock, shoved Zyra down, and drew her blaster. One shot, it missed. Second shot hit the drone's wing, but not enough to stop it. It fired back. A bolt of plasma tearing through the air, grazing her shoulder. She gritted her teeth and took aim again. This time hitting its core, the drone exploded in sparks, pieces raining down into the dirt. More would come. She didn't have time to stop the bleeding. She simply pulled the human back up and kept moving. The beacon was closer now. Up ahead, she saw the metal crate, half buried in dirt and vines. She reached it and punched in the override code from memory. The lid hissed open with a cloud of cold air. Inside a pulse rifle, 2 medkits, an old emergency transmitter, and a stealth shield, she whispered, grabbing it quickly. She threw the device onto the ground beside them, activating it. A shimmer spread around the 3 of them like a dome, bending the light. They vanished from the drone's scanners, invisible to the eye. They all collapsed inside it. Breathing hard, hearts pounding, the ship passed overhead again, scanning. But didn't stop. It turned and flew further east. Tricked, for now, the human lay back, staring at the stars above. "That was close," he murmured. Alcara sat beside him, pulling out the medkit. She patched his wound quickly, using the stim gel to stop the internal bleeding. "You're lucky I found this crate," she said, smiling faintly. You're lucky I didn't finish the job when I tore off your helmet, he chuckled softly. You tried? Zyra curled up beside her father, finally crying, not because she was scared anymore, but because she was safe for the moment. Her tiny hand clutched his shirt, her voice trembling. I missed you so much, Daddy. I missed you too, he whispered, tears in his eyes now. I never stopped looking for you. Alcara turned away, giving them a moment, but even as they reunited, her mind was racing. Captain Marek wanted this child. The Tagaran Syndicate wanted this child. And now that Alcara had interfered, she would be a target too. She checked the emergency transmitter. It still worked. She typed in a coda signal to a friend from the war, a smuggler who owed her a life. It would take time for him to arrive, but there was no other choice. She looked back at the father and daughter. The man was already slipping back into unconsciousness. Zyra held onto him tightly, refusing to let go again. Alcara stood, gripping her rifle, her blade at her hip. They weren't safe yet. The real fight was still coming. The forest was quiet again, but Alcara knew better. Quiet didn't mean safe. It only meant the enemy was changing tactics. She sat near the edge of the stealth field, scanning the horizon through her visor. The stars blinked above like cold, silent eyes. The human man lay behind her, unconscious but breathing. Zyra had finally fallen asleep, curled beside him, her small hand still clutching her toy, but Alcara. She did not rest. Her fingers moved quickly over her wrist console, checking signal strength, power levels, and drone traffic patterns. The emergency transmitter had sent the call. Now it was just a matter of time. Her contact, Dren, was a smuggler. And a liar, but he never broke a life debt. He'd come if he was still breathing. A soft noise made her tense like boots on dry leaves. Alcara turned her head sharply, eyes narrowing. There was nothing in sight. But her instincts screamed. She tapped her blade once, activating silent mode, then stepped outside the shield, moving like a shadow. She followed the sound into the trees, careful not to make a sound. Suddenly, a voice came from the darkness, calm, cold, and familiar. I thought you were dead, Alcara. She spun, blade raised, and there she was, Captain Marek. The woman stepped into the moonlight, her armor shining with silver trim, her black cloak trailing behind her like smoke. Her face was older than Alcara remembered, but no less sharp, eyes like ice, mouth like a knife, deadly, elegant, terrifying. Marek. Alcara growled, You're the one behind all this. Marek tilted her head, smiling slightly. Of course I am, she said. You always were slow at seeing the full picture. You hired the syndicate. Alcara said, stepping forward. You took the child. I saved the child. Marek replied, voice cool, from a system that would use her like a weapon. Same as they tried to use me. You're insane, Alcara snapped. She's just a little girl. She's not just a girl, Marek hissed, stepping closer. She's the key to Earth's last gate, and the last piece of Project Aegis. Alcara's breath caught. She'd heard of Project Aegis barely. It was said to be a huge failsafe, a last resort defense hidden deep in old ruins, capable of destroying fleets, rewriting AI systems, or worse. But she doesn't even know, Alcara said, voice tight. She's just a child. She's terrified, that's why. I need her, Marek said, eyes burning now. She needs to be trained, awakened, not kept weak and soft beside a dying father. Alcara raised her blade. You're not taking her. Marek laughed softly. You can't stop me. Not alone. I'm not alone, Alcara whispered. A crack echoed through the forest. A pulse blast tore through the air. Striking the ground near Marek's feet, she jumped back as Alcara dove behind a tree. The shot had come from behind Dren. A rusted, patched-up scout ship hovered just above the trees, camouflaged by forest light. Dren leaned from the side door. Grinning and waving, "Did someone order extraction?" he called. Blasting again at Merrick's position, Alcara ran back to the stealth field, deactivating it quickly. "Wake up," she shouted. Shaking the human, he groaned, but opened his eyes. "We have to move now." She grabbed him under the arms and dragged him toward the ship. Zira followed, scared but trusting. Behind them, Marek shouted, calling for her drones. Calling for backup, the ship lowered just enough for the ramp to hit the ground. Dren reached out and pulled Zira in. Alcara shoved the father inside next, then turned to cover them. Marek fired a shot. It hit the ramp's edge. Burning a hole near Alcara's boot, Alcara fired back, blasting the ground beside Marek and forcing her to retreat behind cover. "Get in," Dren shouted. Alcara jumped aboard, hitting the close button on the ramp. The ship lifted fast, engines roaring. Inside, Zira clung to her father, crying again. Alcara dropped to her knees, heart racing. Blood dripping from her arm wound. She didn't even feel the pain. She was too focused on the face she had just seen. Captain Merrick wasn't giving up. This wasn't over, not even close. The scout ship shook as it climbed higher into the atmosphere. Smoke trailed from its damaged thruster, and warning lights flashed across the pilot's console. But Dren grinned like he always did, chewing a piece of dried meat like nothing was. "Wrong. Hold tight," he called back. "We'll be in orbit in less than 2 minutes, if the engines don't fall off." Alcara sat on the floor of the hold, her armor scorched, her arms trembling from exhaustion. Across from her, Zira clung to her father, both of them wrapped in a thin thermal blanket. The man was alive, but barely. She had patched his wounds with the last of the medjol. His breathing was slow but steady. Zira looked up at Alcara with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Is she going to come after us again?" The girl whispered. Alcara didn't lie. "Yes," she said, "but we'll be ready." Zira nodded slowly, wiping her face with the edge of the blanket. Her courage reminded Alcara of her own brother, how he had smiled even on the worst days. Of war, she wouldn't let this child be stolen, not by anyone, not even by Captain Merrick. Suddenly, the cum crackled to life. Dren cursed and hit a button. The ship's screen lit up, showing an image Merrick, her face cold, her voice like steel. "Alcara," she said calmly, "listen carefully." Dren moved to mute her, but Alcara raised a hand. She wanted to hear this. "You're running," Merrick continued. "But I know where you're going. I know what you plan to do." Alcara narrowed her eyes. She didn't say a word. "You think you can hide the girl." "Bury the code, destroy the key," Marek said, "but the gate will open. With or without you." "You're wrong," Alcara said softly. "This gate won't open, not ever." Marek smirked on the screen. "I offered you a place at my side," she said. "You chose weakness." "No," Alcara replied. "I chose humanity." The screen cut out, and the silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Dren looked back, his smile gone. "What now?" he asked. "Where do we take her?" Alcara stood, her wounds burning, her mind set. "There's only one place," she said. "The dead sector." Dren blinked. "You mean the quarantine zone?" "That place hasn't had a signal in a decade. That's why it's perfect." Alcara said, walking to the console. "If Merrick's after the key, we make sure no one can ever use it, not her, not Earth, not even us." The human stirred, barely lifting his head. "But what about my daughter?" he whispered. "She deserves a future." Alcara knelt beside him, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. "She will have one," she said, "because we're going to erase the code from her body." He looked at her with tired eyes. "Can that even be done?" "Only at the source," Alcara said. "At the gate itself." Zira didn't fully understand, but she held her father tighter. "I don't want to be a weapon," she whispered. "I just want to be with my daddy." Alcara nodded slowly, and You will be, she said. I swear it. The ship broke into orbit, flying toward the edge of known space, toward the sector where the stars no longer glowed, where failed experiments and ancient ruins drifted silently in the void. The dead sector, once a battlefield, now forgotten, but not empty, not safe. Hours passed in silence. Alcora sat beside Zyra, holding her close as she slept. Her father remained unconscious, but alive. Dren piloted the ship with unusual focus, his usual grin gone. Everyone knew what was coming. Then they arrived, floating in the dark, hidden between asteroid fields. It stood like a monument of Sarotha Gate, a structure of black stone and humming steel, tall as a mountain, cold as death. Light still flickered inside, despite being untouched for years. The Earth symbol marked its coralong with one word in ancient. Human code, Aegis. They landed on a crumbling platform near its base. Alcora carried the child in her arms, her weapons ready. Inside, the walls hummed with ancient power. At the center was the console where the code could be deleted, once and forever. Zyra placed her hand on the panel. As instructed, the system responded immediately, scanning her biometrics, her DNA. A voice echoed from the depths, old and broken, key. Matched activation in 3, 2, no. Alcora shouted, slamming her hand over the override authorization. Wipe code. Delete all gate protocols. The system hesitated. Then, a soft chime. Command accepted. Wiping memory, a bright light filled the chamber, then faded. The gate was silent now. Its power was gone forever. Zyra looked up at Alcora. Is it done? Alcora smiled, tears in her eyes. It's done. They returned to the ship. The gate behind them crumbling at last. A weapon lost, a war prevented, one girl saved. As the ship turned back toward the stars, Zyra whispered, "Will you stay with us, Alcora?" Alcora paused, then nodded slowly. "I will," she said, "as long as you need me." The end.